Here we go. Time to talk FICO.
Love it.
You gentlemen ready? David Hadaway with us, CEO of Altair Data, and of course, the great Coby Hakalir, second-generation mortgage man, VP of Mortgage Banking and Ancillary Services at T360. Last week, FICO made this announcement. They launched a cost-cutting initiative, so they say, where they claim they'll be able to bypass the bureaus, which I don't know is possible. Gentlemen, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Well, everyone's like, oh, my goodness, we're going to save so much money. But there's a reason to believe this might lead us down the path to more money, more problems. David Hadaway, come on, man, give us your lens. What does the announcement really mean?
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand actually what FICO's thinking, because the FICO score they announced is $495 is what they're charging for a FICO score, and yet in this new product they're going to charge $10, and that'll be charged as CRA. So they're basically just moving the marble around the plate, if you will, a shell game. So instead of the bureaus making the money, it's going to go to FICO's pocket. And the other thing that they didn't really say in there, but they're expecting the CRAs to now take in the data from the credit bureaus and then calculate the score. Well, the CRAs aren't going to do that for free. So instead of the credit bureaus calculating and making money on the credit score, it's just going to move over, and that'll be an increase, I believe, from the CRAs. I mean, and the thing people don't realize, the CRAs is a very tight margin. And I know, in the mortgage world, a lot of folks, they think that's expensive for credit reports, and it is. But the CRAs are making the money. They're 10-11% profit margin. I mean, it's very tight. So this is another way for them to raise money, I think.
Coby?
Yeah,
don't be shy here, buddy.
I'm
just the most verbose guy that I know. You're being too respectful. This is a wide open podcast. Let it swing.
I'll take the guns out. Sleight of hand, smoke and mirrors. We talk about more money, more problems. I mean, that seems to be the FICO slogan for the mortgage industry. FICO managed to do a number of things with this move. And you can either respect it or you can be cynical about it, but you have to at least look at it and say, wow, did they pull off something pretty impressive? They managed to do a few things here. One, they baked a price hike for next year completely with the windows open and the oven out and seats around the counter of the kitchen so you could see it. And they managed to do it in a way that they claim is not affecting the mortgage industry by saying they're going to sell direct. That $10, that's what the price is now, right? Except they were splitting that with the bureaus. And then they've got the performance model, which is $495 for the pre-quals, $33 for the closed loans, which we don't even know how they're going to figure out what loan closed and whether or not.
It's in the new world, by the way, just to clarify. This is what they're saying is going to happen. Keep going.
The other thing they did here with this direct model was not only bake a price hike for themselves into 2026 by kind of claiming that they're selling direct. The other thing they set down a line in the sand between themselves and the bureaus, right? They now put all of the focus on what the cost of the data is versus the cost of the score. Previous to yesterday, if you had asked most people, is there a difference between the score and the data? They wouldn't really be 100% sure. What they've done now is they've put a line in the sand and they've put the CRAs squarely in the middle of it. And so it was a pretty impressive move from that standpoint. What it 100% wasn't at this point is a win for the mortgage industry.
Well, the stock was up 18%. Wall Street loved this. He now has FHFA director Bill Pulte applauding FICO and Will Lansing talking publicly on X about how he respects how FICO has re-engineered themselves to be more cost-friendly. David, not the case. Like, what is that, a knee-jerk reaction by the FHFA?
I mean, they again in the announcement, Coby just said they're going to charge. It's going to be $33 per credit report. Yeah, yes, they're trying to lower the pre-qual, but I mean, if the credit reports are $33 a piece, I don't see where that's a cost savings
is
at all.
Is that for a single merge? That 33? Let's clarify.
No, that's per report, I So that's going to be $100.
You run a try, you're talking about $100, right?
Yeah, I
But
think it's a preemptive
aren't-
move because Pulte is they're moving to the buy system, so you only need 2 bureaus sometime in the near future.
we think we are. That has not been said yet, but everyone's assuming, including the folks at the NBA, that we're heading in that direction where you won't need 3 scores, you'll probably need 2.
Right.
And
We hope.
I want to talk Vantage Score and how this impacts them, because they are the elephant in the room, and they're the competition that's coming down the pike. Now they're owned by the 3 bureaus.
Mm-hmm.
So this has always been a very tangled situation. You've got FICO; they produce their fee, they hand it to the bureaus. They produce their fee, they hand it to the CRAs. They produce their fee, and they send it to us. So somewhere in here, this impacts Vantage Score. Which one of you wants to tackle that? Coby, looks like you're ready.
One of the things that's ironic here, right, is that, back in, when was it, 2006, when Vantage Score was brought forth by the bureaus, they began competing with FICO, but not in the mortgage space. They competed with FICO in car sales, bank loans, credit cards, all kinds of different areas where they were competing. But there was almost a complicit agreement that they were partnering, this kind of shaky partnership with FICO in the mortgage business, because they were both mandated by the FHFA to be used, right? FICO on the score side, the bureaus on the data side. Now, this puts them squarely in opposition to FICO for the first time, and it puts Vantage Score in a very different position than it was, to where the bureaus can now, and we talked about this before the show started, the bureaus can now figure out, all right, I have the CRAs here. I can charge a different price to the CRAs that are using FICO than I can for Vantage Score. It puts the bureaus in a position to put Vantage Score in a more competitive position if Vantage Score is more widely used. So it puts them in a squarely oppositional standpoint to FICO to now have to promote Vantage Score, because that's their only path forward.
What do you think about that, David? I see you nodding your head.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. Again, I mentioned that the NBA last year, they talked about it's been a big problem. The LOSs they're still stuck on FICO Classic, which is a score from the 1990s. And so, I mean, until the LOSs get on board, and analyze it and go ahead and make the move, nothing is going to change. I mean, it's got to be mandated, I think, by the FHFA. I mean, if they don't push it, and then there was supposed to be a deadline this month that they were supposed to require both scores, and then everybody's been complaining and they're pushing that off.
Yeah, it was supposed to be Q fourth quarter of 2025. That's why you're referencing that. But if you talk to Vantage Score, they would say the holdup has been FICO, that they were supposed to send in their new model, which is the 10T, and they were supposed to suppress it up against 45 million closed loans, right, to see how it would perform compared to Vantage Score. Vantage Score did that. They complied with the rules around that and sent that data in, and they've just been saying, how come FICO's been able to not do the same? And then FICO then says, well, the bureaus weren't cooperating with us. Is there any hope that we can untangle the credit mess and simplify it? You've got AI, you've got all these other things that should make scoring someone easier, cheaper, but it doesn't seem like we're heading there, David.
No, we're not. I mean, you and I have talked about this before, but I mean, we're talking about mathematical. I think it was a Housing Wire article today. This is a mathematical model. I mean, this is not rocket science. You're predicting defaults, and so there's all kinds of technology now that could do this extremely well. But because of the monopoly, caused by the government, it's squashing innovation. It's squashing the ability for people to get loans. I mean, Vantage Score, and we talked about this before too. There's about 3 million people that have a Vantage Score above 640 that have income that could get a home today, but they don't have a FICO score, so they're not eligible for the government programs, the USDA, VA, FHA, and Greg, I know you mentioned a Housing Wire a few months ago. The big your initiative is to try to get people to first-time home buyers and make homes more affordable. Well, here's an easy way sitting here, and we're not doing anything about it. We're not pushing it and making it a priority to get Vantage Score in there, and it needs to happen. And maybe this will be the impetus to do that.
Well, and to be clear, Coby, what he's saying is that Vantage Score claims that they can come up with some 30 million more scores for people that don't have scores than FICO's model. And of those 30 million, something like 5 million, they're saying, are going to have the kind of score 620 above, maybe, David, where they would at least be in the market, be in play, in the in the black. Would it be in the black? Right? Isn't that how the saying goes? Yeah, not in the red, in the black. To potentially qualify for a mortgage. Now that doesn't mean the supply is going to be there for all those new folks that qualify, but that's a conversation for another day. Which one of you wants to tackle this from like lay terms, as far as the mechanics that go into what is FICO? How does a FICO score get developed? What role do the bureaus have in that, like currently today? And then in this moving forward world that FICO's talking about, how that would change. Which one of you wants to tackle that?
Well, so the scoring was put together in I think it was 1995, David, right? When the FHFA mandated the FICO score, and the score was there to give some uniformity and standardization to all of the credit data that was being ingested by the mortgage industry. So that's where the scoring comes from. It is an algorithm based on the data that's ingested from the bureaus that's then spit out, and it's a score that is based on each of the bureaus, right? And Vantage Score is just a separate and different algorithm than FICO's, and they claim it's a better algorithm than FICO's.
But to be clear, FICO can't produce a score currently without the bureaus providing them the data. Is that correct?
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
Now, the reason that they can't produce a score without the bureaus providing them the data is because the FHFA has mandated that the FICO score come from the bureau data. Okay, so that's what puts them into this kind of partnership, is that the FHA has mandated both FICO on the score side, the bureaus on the data side. Where I think the true competition can come in is on the data side, because we have two different scoring. We have Vantage, we have FICO, right? But scoring is just an algorithm based on data, and you can get data from a lot more places that's a lot more readily available today than it was 30 years ago when the FHFA put these mandates in. I have such a hard time with saying FHFA today. It's probably because it's a Friday. But I think that one of the things that the FHFA can do to be proactive here is they can say, let's open up where the data can come from. Let's allow data from other providers other than the bureaus. And if we do that, then we can start seeing some competition. Then we can start seeing some more robust scoring. We can start seeing the cost of the data coming down, because the GSEs right now are buying data more cheaply than from the bureaus. And other financial institutions are as well. There's no reason in the world why the FHFA can't act. Instead of going after mortgage fraud, instead of going after the Fed chair, instead of doing all the things that Pulte's doing that are not necessarily productive, this is something he can do right now that can be productive and bring down the cost of manufacturing a loan, and bring, as David said, bring 30 million more buyers into the fold.
I mean, David, you've made a living for many, many, I think, decades in the data space. Is what Coby's saying feasible? Could you ever see another data source being accepted beyond the three bureaus?
I think I think it definitely should. I mean, they already are bringing in a lot of other data. They're bringing in rental data. They're bringing in utility data. A lot of data. So think if you're renting a home and you don't have a lot of credit yet, but you've made payments, regularly for 2 years, then you've proven that you can, would not be a big risk to purchase a home. But I mean, there's nothing in your credit profile that's going to show that. So yeah, the more that needs to come in for sure. But I think the problem is on the backside, and the government, the GSEs, they're just holding things up, just like the government does, where they're not analyzing it and not freeing that up. I mean, I'm a proponent of we should have the static score. We should have we do a lot of continuous learning models. We are in data coming in constantly, and we're continually learning and improving based on the data we have coming in. And I mean, that's the best way of getting the best model. And I mean, now FICO's gone 20 years with the same model. And y'all and the mortgage companies are still using that, and it's just kind of backwards. It's just not best for the consumer, and it's not best for the mortgage industry either.
But to be clear, once again, Coby, FICO is saying in this big announcement, they're going to give the ability for CRAs to get the FICO score directly from them, or the data directly from them. No, not the data, because the bureaus have the data. So this end around that they're talking about, isn't that going to put the onus on the CRAs to then have to go in and get it from the bureaus?
Correct.
And then what are the bureaus going to do? How are they going to upcharge to make sure they're getting their piece?
Well, the borrower is going to pay for it. That's the point. That's where the mortgage industry loses in all of this, is because FICO is now looking like, hey, we've now cut the cost of doing business with FICO. We've made it cheaper. We've made it more accessible. We've made it easier. You can work with your CRAs because the CRAs are going to be able to ingest the data and produce the FICO score. You don't have to worry about, the going to the bureaus to produce the FICO, right? All they've done is they've put the onus on the CRAs to now have to negotiate the cost with the bureaus and then have to negotiate the cost with the lenders for those increased costs, because those increased costs are going to come from the bureau increasing their costs in the back end to recover the $495 that they were making on FICO prior to this.
Yeah. So all we did, David, then, from what it sounds like, is we've just changed the seats at the table.
Exactly.
With the potential of mo money, mo problems. We're going from how it is now, FHA to the bureaus to the CRAs to FHA to the CRAs to the bureaus. Is anything there not factual?
FICO, not FHA.
That's what I meant.
FICO is making more money. I mean, again, FICO, it says a price decrease. They went from $5 to $10. They doubled their, fee for the FICO score. So, I mean, basically they're saying, no, you're not going to give this to the bureau. You're going to give that to us. And they're assuming the CRAs aren't going to charge to calculate the score. And, so then you ask that part. I mean, it's a fairly easy process to take, scorecards and to send that, to license that to the CRAs, and they just pull in your transactional data and then they apply the FICO score on there. So that's not that difficult, but like I said before, they're going to charge for that. I'm assuming.
And by the way, that was not, sorry, Dave, but that was not lost on Wall Street. That's why their stock price went up 20%. That's why the bureaus each took a hit in their stock price yesterday. And for Bill Pulte to applaud this and talk about how this is great for the mortgage industry when he should be our biggest champion shows a complete lack of understanding of the mechanics of our industry and what the mandates around the bureaus and the FICO scoring are. So that to me was one of the most deflating parts of all this.
Well, in fairness to him, I talked to people at the CRAs yesterday. I talked to people at either FICO or Vantage Score. I'm not going to say which one, who didn't know what we're talking about. They didn't even know the mechanics of how this was. Some were like, how's this even possible? How are they going to get around this diagram? They didn't even understand
the flywheel.
It's complicated.
Yeah.
So I think people are catching up at different speeds at different times. And should the director had maybe dug in a little deeper, it does appear to be that way. But Will Lansing right now somehow smelling like roses. This guy that made $65 million in 2023. How do we tell this story? I guess we start here, David, but how do we shed a brighter light on this to make sure that consumers don't get hosed?
I mean, FICO's I think they're $500 million in profit last year, net income. They're 32% profit margin. They have a profit margin big. I mean, you got these real estate, mortgage, all you guys out there, we're struggling with our, to make money. And there's a lot of real estate brokerages that are hanging by a thread, a lot of IMBs, and then you got FICO out there, 32% and increase and trying to figure out other ways of making more and more money. And, they try to say that, oh, this is a small part of your closing costs. I mean, that's like saying I'm going to buy a new truck and the lug nuts cost $100 because the government's making me buy these expensive lug nuts. And I got to do that. And yet, it's because, well, if your lug nut falls off, then, and that's just a small part of the cost of your car. Well, yeah, but a lug nut costs $10, not $100. They're charging $30 for a score. We sell tons of scores, buy tons of scores. There's nothing in the range of $5, much less $30 for a score. I mean, once you've created it, then you just apply it and go. There's no risk. There's no, it just really is. I mean they're taking advantage of the monopoly that they have. And it's frustrating.
I think we should keep talking about lug nuts because I bet between Greg and I, we've probably changed a whole ton of tires in our lifetime.
I'm a little mesmerized by David's chest hair here. I want to know what goes into the decision to wear the shirt down that low. Like, are there more? No, it's a good look. Hey, don't do that.
Yeah, we like it.
I want you to be David. Look, you can get away with that. I can't. I don't know. I'm feeling like I'm lacking masculinity here, which I normally. I mean, we're feel like that anyway. Yeah, we're all buttoned up. See this, David? You're a real man. You're
both
a real
wearing
man.
Shirts underneath.
Hey, let's pivot to triggers for a minute because the trigger bill passed, and here we are, 5 months and change away from it going into effect, I want to talk about two aspects of this. One, how it's going to change the dynamics of the data industry, which you're right in the middle of, David. But the other is FICO and how they will be affected. And I'll tell you where I'm coming from, because I always thought, I need you to tell me if I'm right or wrong. FICO benefited more than anybody, because anytime a trigger was purchased, credit would have to be repooled, and a FICO score, the register would just keep ringing for FICO. So I see you nodding your head. I guess I'm right there, but talk about the financial element that no more triggers brings to the three bureaus. I know there's one in particular that sells the most, and then FICO.
Yeah, I mean, it's a decent number, but I mean, it's a small part of their revenue. And really, a lot of people think the NBA was the one. And again, I don't want to rain on their parade, but what I heard is the credit union lobby is who came to the table, and that's an important vertical for the bureaus. And so when they came to the table, the bureaus have lobbied heavy against triggers for years, and they kind of pulled away the last year. And then I think that's why I got this thing over the finish line.
When you say they pulled away, what do you mean? Because the bureaus wanted trigger leads, right?
No, again, we're close with all the bureaus, and a couple of them told me they were not lobbying.
Well, there are three bureaus. One in particular sold the lion's share of the triggers, correct, Coby?
Experian, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so I mean, it would make sense that the other two wouldn't want them because they're not getting the revenue. Let's talk about on the data side, David. Let's get into a conversation about how to make mortgages happen, because we have IMBs watching this. We've got leaders wondering where the best place is, where the best data source is to go and get consumers in, and particularly earlier on in the funnel, which we all talk about. How do we get to consumers at the point of thought? What are you seeing on the data side where there's momentum to that end?
Yeah, you obviously have the purchase side, and then you have the refinance side. And so, on the purchase side, it's the biggest struggle, I think, to try to find with data, but we've had some success looking at life event data, looking at pre-listing data. We've got several models around that and have had good success with that. On the refinance side, you want to track the interest rates, and, we track it on a daily basis. And, when we see interest rates, come to a certain realm or range, we then apply that to customer database, whether it's a servicer's portfolio or the customer portfolio, and we see what the spread is. And you want to get in front of those customers, you want to be the first one there. The servicers have gotten a lot more aggressive. And so it's going to be, unlike back, 3 or 4 years ago when it was a feeding frenzy and all of us were making a lot of money on refinances, the servicers are kind of cornering that market now. So I think you'll see, I really believe you're going to see, I've already heard some of our customers saying it, they're moving, they want to service their own accounts. They've learned from the Rocket, Mr. Cooper. A lot of them were selling Mr. Cooper, and they realized they were selling our customers to Rocket. And so they're going to try to hang up either through partnerships and I think it's a perfect storm, because with AI now, there's always it's expensive to service, and maybe it was, but it's getting a lot cheaper now with the right tools, I believe.
Look, the mortgage industry has a major uphill battle in front of it. And you talked about meeting customers further up the funnel at the point of thought versus the point of sale. I know this, Brian View talks about this all the time. And the biggest problem we have is that most consumers are still getting, the younger generation, I'm talking about millennials, Gen Z, most of them are still getting their information from TikTok and from YouTube. And they're not getting it from us. They're not getting it from the loan industry. They're not getting it from loan officers. Case in point right now, if you were to ask most younger people where they're getting information about the government shutdown and how it might affect getting a mortgage and how it might affect the mortgage industry or the real estate industry, they're going to YouTube. They're going to TikTok. They're not getting it from us. We're not leading the conversation on this. We're just hoping that it kind of blows over and we're saying, oh, well, it'll be okay. We've been through shutdowns before. This one will pass as well. So that's where the biggest opportunity is for mortgage, is to figure out how to get to those customers sooner. There is tons of data, are tons of data. There is tons of data, right? I think it's are tons of data. There are tons of data points of where those people are going to get those.
You made points plural to protect yourself. I love how you did that. Very quick.
Yeah. It was a complete hedge.
Your mother would be very proud.
We should get her on.
What? We should. Hey, I have a question for David. I know I'm cutting you off, Coby. Don't be mad at me. You're used to that. Does direct mail work anymore, David? Well, first of all, in your lifetime, in your business practices.
Hold on a second. You cut me off to ask a question about mail.
Yeah, because look, this guy is like,
I'm talking about reaching millennials and Gen Z, and you cut me off to ask about mail. Okay,
well, because listen, you want to know the truth? You're going to love this.
Yeah.
You actually cut me off when I was about to ask that question. So I'm blaming you. No, I'm kidding. You didn't. What really happened? You want to know the truth? I had a senior moment. I had this thing on the top of my head, and then he got done talking, and I couldn't remember what I wanted to ask, and then you jumped in. That's honestly what happened.
Okay, let's go ahead. Let's talk about mail.
Continue your thought.
No, it's okay. Let's talk about mail. David, what's your favorite?
Well, no, it's important. David, how many mail pieces do you think you've been directly or indirectly responsible for sending out in your illustrious career? I want you to just pick a number, bro. Pick a number.
I mean, it's got to be several billion, I suppose.
7 billion mail pieces. That's
several billion. Yeah, we've got.
Did you say million or billion?
B, bro. B, like bro.
Billion?
Yeah, this guy's a kingpin, man. He's a kingpin.
Yeah, we got one customer that buys about 150 million credit records a year. So that's just one customer.
Does direct mail still work? Don't give me the canned answer. Like seriously, like the ROI on that's got to be a lot less than it used to be, or no?
It's getting tougher. I mean, it's not tough for mortgage because you make a good amount of money on it. Home equity, there's still a lot. Figure, they're spending they're probably $250 million. I mean, say $250 million on their campaigns. That's you have to use additional. You can't just do direct mail. You also need to leverage the other sources. You need to leverage email. You need to leverage digital to optimize it. But yeah, there's a lot of mail going out, and the big guys out there, they're mailing.
So you have data. You have data. Do you also have a mail house?
We partner. We a lot of our customers are mail houses, and so we don't want to compete with them. So yeah, So
here's my next question. Now I'm cutting you off. What an asshole! Jesus, I should just hit myself over the head right now. Hang on. Ow.
Can't wait to see what this is going to be about.
Hey, agentic AI.
Oh, all right.
Let's talk about it because that's part of this direct consumer call center thing, churning through data fast. David, give us your crystal ball as someone that's been in the data, calls. You've touched call centers, so many over the years. How do you see agentic AI? And when I say agentic AI, I mean you feed information and data into an AI bot, and they call the consumer and have conversations with them to then generate leads. Like, is that going to be all the rage and be the majority of the business being delivered through direct to consumer in 3 years?
I don't think it's the majority because it's only 10% of people are not on the do not call list. So you've got a whole chunk of people over here. So I mean, I think a lot of times we throw people in.
Is that right? I'm sorry. Only 10% of people are on the DNC.
Are not on the DNC.
Oh, they're not. Okay, not.
Yeah, 90% of people on the do not call list. So I mean, if you're just relying on calling, and to your point, what y'all both said, that's shrinking because you're the millennials. They're not picking up the phone. So. It's getting fewer and fewer on the call center, but it is. I mean, it's definitely working. We work closely with Total Expert. They demoed at recent Housing Wire a really cool application where they're doing a lot of that. So it definitely makes it more productive for sure. And I think that's one piece, but I think you need a multi-tiered approach. I mean, it's that way in any kind of marketing. I mean, if you're just relying on social media, you're missing out a huge chunk of people. I mean, there's a lot of people are not on social media, believe it or not. If you're just doing direct mail, you're missing out. And so you really need to be doing a multi-channel. And again, we help people do that. We don't do that, but that's what we see work is hitting all those channels and keep doing that same thing. But agentic AI is a big piece, and it's going to make salespeople much more effective. I always hated making those cold calls way back when, so I'd love to have had, Claude do it for me.
David, how many different data sources does your company ingest?
I mean, we have probably 20 major data sources that come in, but then behind those, there's thousands of sources outside of that, but we have 20 major. So we have all three bureaus. We have alternative bureaus. We have a lot of data that comes in.
Yeah, I mean, and that's where I kind of feel like our industry is thinking small potatoes, right? We're embroiled in this discussion about a FICO score and a Vantage score and the three bureaus, right? And it's really just the tip of the iceberg as far as the amount of data that's out there, the amount of sources of data that's out there, the amount of different scoring models that we could be implementing very easily. I mean, a scoring algorithm, to create a scoring algorithm in the 90s versus creating a scoring algorithm today, I got to imagine the lift on that is 0.1% of what it was, right? Just based on the amount of computing power we have versus then, right? So why isn't the industry thinking more big picture? You know, we've had some people talk about how we can go to a single bureau data, right, and then produce a score out of that. But why aren't we thinking bigger picture, where we just remove the need for a FICO score, we remove the need for a Vantage score, we have the lenders ingest data, come up with their own analysis of it, and then if they certify it and determine it's okay and it meets Fannie or Freddie standards, sell it to the GFEs, right? Why can't we get there?
You're preaching to the choir. That's exactly what I'm saying. I mean, it literally is. It's a layperson can build a model like that with the technology today.
Yeah, we know the answer. Come on, you know the answer, Coby. It's the greenback, baby. It's all the cash, the lobbyists. It's billions and billions, if not trillions of dollars.
Yeah, and I get that, but I feel like, you know, we're getting snowed right now by FICO. We're about to get snowed by the bureaus who are going to counterpunch FICO. The CRAs are going to be in the middle of it all, and we're going to be left debating, you know, well, why can't we get, you know, a score from here and a score from there? Can we just please go down from 3 bureaus to 2 and save a little bit of money? And I just feel like we keep getting squeezed, and we're using about, you know, 5% of the actual data and scoring and computer power that's out there, which not only would reduce the cost of manufacturing alone, but would also allow, as David, you alluded to, tens of millions of more potential borrowers coming or buyers coming into the market. You know, we've got some systemic issues in housing without, you know, kind of battling these little things on the fringes that are making it that much tougher to buy a home.
Bro, you just mic drop. You know that?
Maybe.
That was so good. I'm gonna promote this by taking out that little piece and dropping it in a LinkedIn. So look for that over the weekend. This is airing on Monday, but some of us are at the Housing Wire event right now in Dallas. So this is live, but you know, not really live, just a couple of hours before the show aired. So gentlemen, this has been great. Did we leave anything on the table? Any final comments? David, we'll start with you. Now that we've increased the revenue for your company by talking about Altair, Coby and I are expecting to get some advisory shares here very soon. Anything you want to say, David?
Yeah, again, we've had to fight this FICO battle. I mean, they're continuing to raise the costs, and again, we're just passing on reselling. We're trying to help mortgage companies, you know, grow their business, and it makes it extremely difficult when FICO is continually doing a money grab, and this is another way of them doing it, in my opinion.
Coby,
you know, my last thought is you brought up something earlier, which is, you know, how do we spread this word amongst the industry about what FICO's really doing and what the implications are? You know, short of, you know, everybody producing infographics and posting it, you know, ad nauseum on LinkedIn. But the reality is that if we keep talking about it like we have with other issues in our industry that we've been so successful in working through, you know, I think the message will resonate and it will get out. I think there's some inherent flaws in what FICO put out, even if you can get the data cheaply. I mean, just the performance model where it's $495 for pre-quals and $33 for a closed loan. How are they going to track that? How are they going to bill that? What happens to a pre-qual that then becomes a closed loan? Like, what's the cost of that? I think that I think this issue needs to be talked about a lot more, this issue of credit scoring and bringing more borrowers into the fold. So I love that we did a show on this, and we need to just keep the pressure on.
Hope everybody enjoyed it. Gentlemen, enjoy the rest of your week. Appreciate it so much. We'll have to do this again soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.